everyone, so today's video is going to be the second in my hibernation series. So hibernation is a really confusing topic which has changed quite a lot in recent years, so there's a lot of conflicting information available, and I've found that some people are very pro hibernation and some people are very anti hibernation. So I thought I'd share some of my research on some of the pros and cons and some of the arguments that are out there to try to help anyone who's struggling to decide whether or not to hibernate their tortoise. So there's also a lot of confusing terminology, so if you'd like to know the difference between hibernation and brumation, then check out my last video. But long story short, both terms are acceptable for tortoises, but the term hibernation is more commonly used in chelonians, so chelonians being tortoises, terrapins, turtles. So I will be using the term hibernation going forward, but the term brumation is also acceptable. So I'm going to jump straight in there with some of the reasons why people choose to hibernate their tortoises. So certain species are biologically programmed to hibernate every year, which helps to ensure slow and natural growth. So if a tortoise is eating for 365 days a year, their food intake is going to be much more than what it would be in the wild and what their bodies are designed to ingest. So this can lead to abnormal growth, and it can put a strain on their renal system, which eventually can lead to kidney issues, bladder stones, and it can contribute to a shorter lifespan. So when I say certain species, only some species of tortoise hibernate. So these I will put up on screen now, but they include the Greek, the marginated, Hermann's and Horsfield tortoises. So with that said, hibernation can potentially be dangerous for the tortoise, and it requires careful planning and research, which does put off a lot of keepers. But there are now methods of hibernation which give you much more control over the process, and there are some great resources available to help you through it. So in my opinion, the benefits outweigh the potential dangers, but that's a decision that you're going to have to make for yourself, weighing up what's best for you and your tortoise. So it's also a bit of a myth that tortoises can't be hibernated until a certain age. So in the wild, even hatchlings of a few months old would hibernate. However, young and small tortoises are at a greater risk of developing issues during hibernation, so they do require a shorter and much more carefully managed hibernation. So a lot of people choose not to hibernate before 2 or 3 years old due to the increased risks, which is absolutely fine, but young tortoises can be hibernated. You've just got to be a lot more careful. So why do people choose not to hibernate their tortoise? So it is absolutely essential that you know what species of tortoise you own, as not all species hibernate. So please do not attempt to hibernate a tortoise if you don't know what species it is. And I personally wouldn't only trust the word of pet shops or breeders, and I'm not saying they don't know what they're doing, but it does happen where they do get it wrong, and this could lead to a fatal mistake. So please do your own research, and I will leave some identification guides in the description bar below from the British Colonia group. So species that do not hibernate include Egyptian tortoises, Tunisian tortoises, tropical species like redfoots and African spurred tortoises, and hingeback tortoises. So there is a big list of tortoises that do not hibernate, so please check that your tortoise is a hibernating species. So when you're thinking about hibernating, you need to consider if your tortoise has been unwell in the last year. So this includes things like parasitic diseases, systemic diseases like pneumonia, viral infections, mouth rot, skin infections, any fractures or dislocations, any frost damage or burns or major trauma, any surgical interventions that require anaesthetic. If your tortoise has been through any of the above, then your tortoise should not hibernate until the following year at the earliest. Your tortoise must be 100% healthy before attempting to hibernate. It can be really dangerous to hibernate an underweight or sick tortoise. And tortoises can't recover from illnesses as quickly as we can. Sometimes it takes years, so they do need to be healthy for a year prior to hibernating. So I also, for this reason, wouldn't hibernate a tortoise that you've had for less than a year if you've got a new tortoise. because underlying illnesses can take a while to show, and if you can't be sure they're 100% healthy, then it's not worth the risk. So you want to make the decision about whether or not to hibernate early in the year. So you want to be thinking about it in the summer. If your tortoise isn't fit enough by the summer, then it's not going to be fit enough in time for hibernation in kind of November, December. So this is because tortoises need to have built up enough reserves of body fat, which stores vitamins and water. And without this for them to live off during hibernation, they can die of starvation or dehydration. Or if the fat reserves run out too soon, then the animal will begin to use up fat contained in the muscles and the internal organs, which will also eventually run out, meaning your tortoise will die in hibernation. So I know this sounds really scary and puts off a lot of people, but it's also important to remember that although there are risks, hibernation is a part of certain species' natural cycle, and we now have a much better understanding of the process, and we've got methods that we can use that allow hibernation to be a controlled and measured process. Gone are the days when we would just pack up a tortoise in a box and shove it in the attic for 6 months. A lot of tortoises used to die in hibernation like this because not enough was known about it, and we were using methods that were just not providing the right environment. But now we can control it and we can monitor it really closely. It's not as risky as long as you make sure your tortoise is healthy first. So I'll also leave some links in the description bar with some useful resources. There are some really good websites, and there's also a few Facebook pages and forums that you can join where there are really knowledgeable keepers who can help with hibernation advice and answer any questions. So keep an eye out for my next video, which will be on how to perform a pre-hibernation check on your tortoise to ensure that they're healthy enough for hibernation, where we'll be going into what to look out for signs of illness and how to know that your tortoise has put on enough fat reserves to survive the winter. So keep an eye out for that video. If you make sure that you're subscribed and you've got notifications turned on, you'll get alerted when that video comes out. So thank you so much for watching, and I really hope this has given you some ideas, and I will speak to you guys soon. Bye!